Chapter 2. Strengthening. It seems that the thing Garp was fiddling with is this sword. This sword didn't have any scabbard, the atmosphere was filled with a sharp aura. Apparently this sword is not normal. Roger was slightly surprised to see the sword in Garp's hand. It's one of the 21 sabers, Honu no Tsuki. Garp grinned and handed over the sword to Roger, then continued to say. Before I heard you say that you wanted a sword, while I was destroying a pirate group I found this, so I brought it back. The legendary swords are divided into 3 groups. That is the Shodai Kitetsu known as Seijo o Wazamono, the most famous out of the 3, comes after that the Nadai Kitetsu known as O Wazamono, and finally the Sandai Kitetsu known as Rai o Wazamono. One of the Shodai Kitetsu is Yori, the sword uses by Mihawk, the world's strongest swordsman. Wanting to get one of the Shodai Kitetsu is hard even if it's not much different from the Nadai Kitetsu. Garp didn't come for a week, did he go to get me this sword? What found it when eradicating a pirate group? Most likely he spent some effort to find news about such sword in the sea. No wonder Garp spent this month evading him. So this is why. Garp action made Roger that he belong in here. He took the Honosuke then said seriously, thank you. Ha ha ha, you smelly brat. Why suddenly being polite? Garp smiled at Roger while his eyes flashed with warm light, but in the next moment he suddenly exposed a ferocious smile. You little brat, this past month I heard that you were in the bottom of all the recruits. His voice fell, then suddenly stood up and a fist knocked on Roger's head. Ah! Roger cried loudly. The next moment the sword was pulled out of his hands, then he looked at Garp discreetly. Roger rubbed a swollen bag on his forehead looking at Garp and said, Uncle Garp, why did you hit me? No reason. Garp said to him while crossing his hand on his chest. Roger was about to spurt blood from his mouth. Then Garp glanced at Roger and continued. By the way, I gave you a month of leave. For the next month I will training you personally. You have to be serious or, and he point out his fist. What? Roger feigned ignorance. Garp instantly stared at him. He was ready to send him flying with a punch and said, what, you don't want to? No, what I mean is, do we start tomorrow? Roger wouldn't refuse. He waited for this moment, but because Garp was elusive before, Roger couldn't ask him. With Garp there, Roger will get stronger easily, but he has to put in some effort. Some half-assed effort would be useless. Of course tomorrow the official training starts. For now go get some rest. Upon seeing that Roger is willing to practice, he calmed down and smiled. Back in his room, Roger directly lied on his bed. He has to rest properly for tomorrow training, but still checked on the system. With a thought, the property bar popped up. The first stage, Broken Sword of the Soul +10, the conditions to strengthen has been met. Attributes. Attack power +30, enhanced energy. 10 out of 10. It seemed that there is no change. Roger yawned and turned to sleep. But the next instant he opened his eye. Roger's mind stirred, you couldn't see any bit of sleepiness in his eyes. This is. The condition has been fulfilled. Before, whenever he looked, that line was the same, you didn't fulfill condition, but impressively this time the condition has been fulfilled. Roger calmed his heart and thought about it. When he returned home he didn't do anything other than Garp giving him Honu no Tsuki. His thought stopped suddenly. That's it. There is anything else that could explain it. After he come home, the only thing that could brought some change to the soul sword is him getting the Honu no Tsuki. Is it necessary to get a sword? Roger's eyes revealed a trace of enlightenment. But he didn't know if it had to be one of the Nadai Kitetsu or Sandai Kitetsu. But that's not important now. What important is, he can now continue to strengthen the soul's sword. The next moment, with a thought from Roger, the sword in his soul appeared again. He took a breath, and after that he didn't hesitate and directly selected the strengthen option in the sword. Suddenly there was a humming sound. At this moment a sudden change happened in the hazy space from before. A road made from golden energy appeared from nowhere and disappeared into the sword, filled the cracks that were in it. Bright golden light wrapped the sword. This is the first time this happened. The previous few times it wasn't this intense. While that golden energy enters the cracks in the sword began to exude little stars. It looked beautiful. Roger was looking at those stars, the crack on the sword began disappearing. Sure enough, this time strengthening brought a qualitative change, even the cracks in the sword began to heal. Roger, while observing the change in the sword, couldn't calm his heart. He was really excited. Eventually the cracks on the sword healed completely and the stars started to fade away. Finally the sword looked like an ancient sword and continued hanging in the air. Then Roger thought about the property bar once again and looked. The second stage, the ancient sword of the soul plus O attributes, attack power plus 4O, power plus 1O, can have additional extraction of a property, enhanced energy, 0/20. Note. This just an experienced bar. Roger could see that other than the attack power there was another attribute that is power plus 1O, and this property wasn't white like the other one but it was green. Obviously, this is a more advanced attribute. When his attack power increased he couldn't feel it. He probable can cause more damage, but now when his power was enhanced he could clearly feel it. Those 10 points in power didn't seem like much, but Roger could feel that his strength increased by at least 30%. It mean that my body strength was only 30 point. Roger then thought, how much is Garp's power? 10 or 20,000. His mouth twitched a bit and he put this thought in the back of his head, then once again looked at the property bar. That enhanced energy was 0/20 now, so obviously if he want to do more strengthening he need 20 point there. So the difficulty went up after the last strengthening. Each time he used the strengthening option the required energy will increase, which Roger already knew, but it was just increasing by 1 in every strengthening, but now it suddenly increased by 10. Roger is not surprised by the sudden increase. What made him surprised is that beside the attack power plus 4O and power plus 1O there is the option to extract another property. That extra attribute. This is quite interesting, try it. Roger just thought. He didn't need to move, and above the property bar a few words appeared. Begin the extraction. After those words appeared the word on property bar disappeared and then a variety of color of attribute flashed. Constantly changing color in addition to green, blue and purple, Roger could see the golden property. But unfortunately he didn't see what property that was. Green and blue appeared the most, purple appeared less and the golden color flashed only once. Alt-out I'm not clear, but it seems that the gold is the highest grade in the color, then come the purple as a rare attribute. Thought Roger while looking at the colors of the flashing property. He didn't know what kind of property will be extracted. End of Chapter 2. To be continued. Chapter 3. Blade of Fire.